Welcome to the Electric Wire Podcast. We bring you news and views on the most pressing issues facing Wisconsin's electric industry, from policymakers, executives, and customer and environmental advocates. Bringing you these discussions, we are the Customers First Coalition. Here's your host, Executive Director Kristen Jilks.
Welcome to the Electric Wire Podcast. I'm Kristen Jilks, and this episode features a recent conversation I had with Nick and Alicia Schmidt of Standish, Michigan. Earlier this summer, Nick and Alicia became some of the first recipients of the Ford F150 Lightning, Ford's first all-electric pickup truck, which is basically just their standard F-150 powered by electricity instead of gas. Ford first revealed the F-150 Lightning in May of 2021 and has over 200,000 reservations for the truck. While not everyone on the list will be able to purchase a truck yet this year, some of the first owners started driving their new F-150 Lightnings in late May of this year. A few of the features that make the F-150 Lightning unique include a front trunk, or a frunk, because there's no engine needed in the Lightning, so the space can be utilized for additional storage up front. Alicia mentions how she's been using the frunk in our interview. The F-150 Lightning also has outlets to use the vehicle as a power bank in both the frunk and in the truck bed itself. Because of our general interest in electric vehicles and electrification here on the Electric Wire Podcast, I'm happy we're able to bring you this interview with Nick and Alicia to help us understand some of the advantages and also challenges that come with being early adopters of the F-150 Lightning and electric vehicles in general. Check out the show notes for a link to a National Public Radio interview on their story as well. I'll turn it over now to my interview with Nick and Alicia Schmidt. So welcome, you guys. Where are you joining from today?
We live in Standish, Michigan. It's about 2.5 hours north of Detroit on the East Coast.
I think I read this in the NPR article. Are you guys involved in farming?
We are not. My family are all big farmers in the area. We live kind of nestled in between all of the farmland. And so peripherally around it, due to family circumstances, we look out the window, there's combines going by and uncles and such and tractors, but that's not what we do. I'm a CTO for an energy company, so definitely not farming related.
Nice. So is that what sparked your interest in electric vehicles? No pun intended.
I don't think you had an option to not be interested in electric vehicles since you're designing the EV charging network.
Nice.
Yeah, I think definitely when I joined the space, became more important. I think we always had a little bit of an interest in it. We always saw Teslas on the road. And then when our daughter was being born, we had to trade in the 2-seater cars and those sorts of things. And
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And where we live is so remote that, for example, every time I go to the gym, it's a 34-mile drive.
Oh, wow.
It's just not economically smart to use gas vehicles.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I always tell people. The more miles you drive, the more money you save, just because the fuel costs are so much lower. How old's your daughter and when did you guys first get an EV then?
She's 3 and we bought it when she was 6 weeks old because we were commuting between here and New York City. And I just was not comfortable taking her on a plane yet.
Yeah.
So we were driving each way. It was a good choice for that.
What was your first EV then? Was it a Tesla?
The Tesla, yeah.
Yeah, Tesla Model 3 is what we bought for the first one.
Obviously, since you guys were the first owners and recipients of the Ford F-150 Lightning, you had a good experience with the Tesla. What were some of the things you liked and wanted to stick with the EVs then?
We have Airstream, and the Tesla Model 3 can definitely not tow the Airstream. So we needed something. I think we really fell in love with waking up and the car was full. We had committed to doing solar and batteries probably a year ago now. And so in that true like American spirit, going off grid and being able to fuel your own car from the house and all of that was really enticing.
To answer your question, though, I really liked that there's such a large charging network for the Tesla. So when we went on road trips, it kind of gave us a planned stop. And with the baby, that was really important. So I think even if we had a gas vehicle, we'd be stopping and kind of hanging out at gas stations or something. And I also really liked the self-driving features. And just all of the integrated apps that it has. And so you never had an issue, finding your music or your anything like that. So we were interested in the truck for all the same reasons, but also because we could pull the Airstream with it. The drawbacks are the charging networks.
That's what I was just going to ask. Do you find a difference between the Tesla charging network and then everybody else?
Yeah.
That's got to be really frustrating, going from pretty reliable placement to just kind of trying to figure it out as you go. I drive a 100% electric Nissan Leaf, and that's largely been my experience as well, where you can get to a charger and that's great, but there's a question of like whether or not it's going to work, if there's going to be people parked in the stalls, stuff like that.
Tesla definitely gives you a better vision of what you're going to expect. You know how many of them are being used right now. You know what the power levels are. You know they're going to work for the most part.
Yeah.
We find ourselves when we had planned our first Airstream towing trip, and the first time we just drove it up to Mackinac Island, thinking that would be not a big deal. We would just drive it up, a few charging stations along the way, no big deal. And it turned into like, oh my gosh, we can't find a charging station. Where are we going to fill up? We had to double back. And so when we did our first trip with the Airstream, I was on Google Earth looking to see, is there space to pull in? Does PlugShare have a recent rating? What's Electrify America say or ChargePoint say about the site? And that's just not something we've ever thought about in the Tesla thus far.
Yeah, I could see that. So how long of a trip is that for you, mileage wise?
I'd have to Google it.
I think it's probably around 170 miles. We went across the state to the west. So how many miles can your Lightning go before you need to charge, like when you're pulling the Airstream? By our calculations, it's about half. So the published range for the Platinum is, I think, 270, 280 or something like that. And it's basically cut in half.
Yeah, whatever we had for range, we assumed it would be half.
Yeah. The Ford...
Is that pretty much only when towing, though? It's a lot more otherwise?
Yeah.
It's pretty true to its range when it's not towing. And I drive all over the planet basically for my day. And I find that the Tesla almost never lives up to the range that it's claiming when I leave the house.
Yeah.
But the same commute with the truck, it was pretty accurate.
Ford's done a great job. If you're towing a trailer, it asks you for the specs, and then it'll calculate, how high you're going to climb for that trip or weather conditions, the size of the trailer, and it modifies the range. So I think Ford's been a lot more realistic about what to expect, and then maybe overpromise or over-delivering, under-promising, which is what you want when the charging network is what it is.
When Ford was rolling it out, they were talking about sort of the special features like the frunk and the capability to utilize it as a charging mechanism itself. Have you guys utilized any of those features yet?
The frunk is great for groceries.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
It has much more capacity than the Tesla.
Yeah.
And I love to put it up front. I don't know why. It's just better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's going to rain, I hate putting groceries in the back of a truck. So it's great to have that option without a bed cover.
Yeah. We haven't used it to charge anything. I see some people online charging their Tesla from the F-150. I don't envision what that use case is for us, but
some of the other features though, like the Blue Cruise.
Yeah. The self-driving is not as great. It kind of bounces a little bit.
Yeah. On top of I know it's a safety feature, but you have to keep your face like directed at the road. And so if you are going to change the channel on the radio, you can't even go, with your eyes, because it's like, hey,
oh, no.
That's great. I know it's safe. It's probably safer than the Tesla version, but what's the point?
Yeah, right.
And then the way that it's detecting the lanes, it's like constantly ping-ponging you back and forth in the lane, and it almost gives me car sickness. But I mean, I'm sure that will improve with software updates.
I've heard from Mach-E drivers that that's not the case, and I'm wondering if the algorithm's just developed for sedan-sized vehicle versus a heavy truck, and they just haven't tweaked that yet. We're often early adopters, and we're used to those sorts of pain points. So I always like to follow all that up with the truck operates great as a truck. So it's doing what it was intended to do. It drives from point A to point B. These are it looks normal, which was a key point for my wife.
Yes, I totally agree. So when you charge, how long is it typically taking to charge back up? Just if you're at home, and where are you typically charging?
So we just, as of yesterday, got our Pro Ford charger. I forget what they're actually calling it, but it's the 80 amp charger. So based off the estimate, it looked to be, I think, 7 hours or 8 hours on the 80 amp charger. We were using a converter to charge it from our current Tesla one, which is a 50 amp, and that was a 9 or 10 hour charge, if I remember right. It's a huge battery. I mean, it's 131 kilowatts. So that's 10 Tesla power walls, which is a lot of capacity. So yeah, there's just a lot of juice to put into the device or to the truck itself.
You were mentioning driving pretty far into town. Do you ever feel like you're doing that? Like when you go into town for groceries, are you looking for stores with chargers, or do you just pretty much charge at home, or if you're on a road trip or something?
We're pretty lucky where the store that I go to has the charging system. But for the most part, I don't need it. I drive the 32 miles, I think, to the grocery store and make it there and back with no issues. Sometimes I drive to the grocery store, to the gym, to another place, and actually another city in the Tri-Cities and home, and make it just fine. But of course, we have not had the truck in the winter, and the Tesla has lower range in the winter.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting to see.
Myers has done a great job. It looks like they've partnered with Electrify America. So we can kind of count on the grocery store we normally shop at having Tesla chargers, and usually Electrify America chargers too.
A little more reliable than ChargePoint.
Yeah, we've had better luck with Electrify America than ChargePoint for sure.
I know Wisconsin and other states like Michigan are likely recipients of federal dollars designed to help build out an EV charging network. Wisconsin just got done with the comment period. And I think one of the things I've heard is like getting experiences from actual EV drivers versus what people making policy who aren't drivers to help demonstrate like where people actually want to charge.
It's interesting because I think if we were going to the UP, the 1 or 2 times we've looked at doing that, it's the charging network's just so sparse up there that, so I'm sure it's the same in Wisconsin, but Michiganders go up north, and that's really tough to do with an EV right now. If you're downstate, it's a bit easier. So I hope as part of those conversations, they think about the rural communities in Michigan and Wisconsin that have to deal with those long stretches and what that looks like if you're actually trying to go on holiday and the tourism dollars that will go along with that as folks go up north.
For the most part, when we go to the UP, though, it's to camp. And so we'll always have the option to charge from the campsite.
Yeah.
But it's still only 80 amps, right? So it'd still take a really long time.
Yeah, those are 50 amps. So
30 to 50. Yeah.
20, 30, 50s. Yeah.
Sounds like your job is kind of related to helping work on EV charging. Can you tell me more about that?
EV charging is part of the suite of offerings that we provide. Blueprint Power is the name of the company. We've been really focused on how do you encourage renewable uptick in decarbonization, but doing so through monetization. So making good investment decisions that also happen to provide that type of new grid renewable support. So we help building owners optimize their current utilization, recommend solar and batteries, connect their existing assets to markets, all around the idea of if you can encourage it to be a good business decision, businesses will be more likely to make the right call.
Right.
And we've seen that resonate with most of our customer base. So EV charging is increasingly becoming part of that because in major metropolitans, it's hard to get the capacity to install chargers. We used to live in Madison. So, around the courthouse or not the courthouse, the state house there, where do you put EV chargers along the square there? And so the real estate owners are in the best position to build out those networks as part of that offering. And if they can park a battery next to it to enable high-speed charging, there's just all sorts of great benefits that come from looking at a microgrid at the edge. And so that's what we've been focused on. That's why I can talk about this stuff, is living and breathing it every day.
Nice. I love it. You'll be happy to know, maybe you know this already, but Madison Gas and Electric installed a fast charging hub right on East Wash, about 3 blocks off the Capitol Square.
Wow.
Which is really cool. So the Tesla chargers are up and running, and they're waiting on a part for, the everybody else chargers, but It's a really cool thing. It's pretty visible from East Wash, and there's like Green Cab that is all Teslas. So they'll be charging there. And yeah, it seems like a lot of the rideshare services are moving to EVs because of the fuel cost savings. Have there been any big surprises for you guys since you got the F-150? Any regrets? Or are you feeling really good about the decision?
You go first.
I am not a fan of its operating system. And I've had several Fords and Ford Sync, and, it's always a little more complicated. But Lord, I could not find the settings for the windshield wipers to save my life one day. And I was about to go into the car wash and it was my turn and there were people behind me. And I'm like, because, the Tesla, it's like one click and it's there.
Right.
So I wish they would make it simpler.
Yes.
But that's really the only issue I have with it.
Yeah.
We've had a few quirks where navigation hasn't worked.
Oh, yeah, it still doesn't work.
Still doesn't work.
And that's pretty imperative when you're towing because it looks at a lot of the factors and compares it to the navigation and stuff. And we just don't have that option still.
Yeah.
Like we said, we chalk it up to being the first adopters here, but hopefully those kind of things get fixed.
I get it. There's quirks to be worked out, but it's good to get those experiences so that they can help improve the experience for the next round.
I feel like so much of the conversation has been around EVs and metropolitans, EVs in cities. And so part of sharing our experiences has been around this idea that you can live in rural Michigan where it's 36 miles to the next big grocery store. And this is totally doable. It's not like we're stressing out every trip. We charge at home. We don't think about it. We go run our errands and do what we need to do. And it's totally fine. I mean, other than dirt roads and trying to keep cars clean, it's no different. And it's been a pleasant experience. So
yeah, the DC metro area is the only metropolitan area we ever had issues with. There's no charging infrastructure there. And that's where my family lives.
Oh,
and
no.
That was me in the butt.
Yeah. Yikes. Okay. So here's our last question for our guests. If you had all the power in the industry, what would you do with it? Maybe the answer is more chargers in the DC metro area, but open to anything. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you do?
I think about the C&I space a lot, but I'll focus my response on resi in this case. Incentive programs go a long way to encouraging these sorts of things. And I think the current climate around gas prices and energy prices are forcing a lot of people to think about things that they hadn't prior. And I've noticed when I post on Facebook, people I never expected asking lots of questions. How much did it cost? How long? And so I think the government incentivizing some of these installations or just, keeping the federal ITC so that solar and batteries are less expensive, streamlining interconnection with the utilities, thinking about how to encourage these installs through utility programs. There's so much we can do just to create a more friendly environment to these types of distributed energy resources and EV installations that we're not doing. So I feel like there's a huge consumer hurdle that has to be overcome before we can have the conversation. And if politicians and federal commission can get in line and incentivize these things, I think it'd go a long way into having more people driving these EVs around the rest of America.
Accessibility is an issue because I have people like my dad who will talk about how he can't afford to drive somewhere today. And he'll say something like, we can't all afford to have electric vehicles. And he's like, if I can't afford $100 in my gas tank, I can't afford to go buy an EV. So that's got to get better for people to be able to take advantage of it to save money.
And I'll give Ford huge kudos here because Tesla is its own thing. And in most people's minds, I think Nissan did a lot of great work around the Leaf and bringing that cost point down. Ford and GM really hold the magic here of how do you bring out that $35,000 EV that has a 200-mile range. I think that's the secret sweet spot that we're all waiting on. So I'm excited that Ford took this big first step in doing this.
Good. Me too. Can't wait to drive one. Has Aunt Jean gotten into the EV yet? That was from the NPR story.
I took her to the county fair in it the other day.
Yes.
The time she'd been in it.
What did she think?
She thought it was cool as heck because it looks like, her father's truck. Except for the giant screen, And I turned on the seat massagers and she's like, oh, hell yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. You can get massaged while you're driving. It's pretty great.
Awesome. I can't wait. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time, and I hope you have smooth driving ahead.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Please support our work. You can subscribe to the Electric Wire podcast if you haven't already, and you can follow us on Twitter at The Electric Wire. Thanks also to the members of the Customers First Coalition for supporting this podcast. Our members are Dairyland Power Cooperative, Madison Gas and Electric, the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin, WPPI Energy, Renew Wisconsin, the Citizens Utility Board, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 2150, and the Wisconsin Electric Cooperatives Association. Thanks again for listening. We'll have a new episode next month.